Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
As part of a small line of pieces we're doing that are kind of pin-up-y type shots where they're a little bit rougher and simpler with just a portrait of a figure, no background, I want to do something to complement the piece I did earlier with Wonder Woman. And Starfire is another favorite of mine from DC, and in particular the way she was designed by George Perez, the way she appeared for, I want to say, the first 20 years of her existence before she was changed by a cartoon version that kind of took away a lot of the alluring qualities to her that were in her initial DNA. So there's a very distinctive face, hairstyle, and vibe from her when she was first created in 1980, and I wanted to connect with that.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another episode of Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Very happy to welcome Rob Salkowitz back to Word Balloon. It's been about a year. Well, actually, it's been about a year and change, Rob, because we spoke pretty early on during the pandemic. And, I kind of wanted things to kind of play out and see where we were sometime later. So it's a great time to get perspective on what we've all been going through for the last year and a half.
Always happy to join you, John. You run the best conversation on the internet for this stuff. So
that's very kind. That's very kind, buddy. Thank you. And truly, I'm a fan of yours. What you do at ICV2, if I'm saying it right. I know it's an eye chart of a URL, but it's Milton Greep's wonderful comic news website, and of course Forbes.com as well. And hey, man, you've been on top of all this stuff. I guess I wouldn't mind starting with, the news of last week, and that is the amount of departures from DC and Marvel from some big creators going to Substack. I had never heard of Substack until these announcements were made. Tell us what we know about Substack in general, and then what they're doing for the comic creators.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting thing, and it's in this general theme because we saw it also prior to that with a bunch of creators like Scott Snyder, bringing a lot of his business over to Comixology from DC. Now you've got Tinian, you've got Hickman, you've got
Nick Spencer.
Sorry, I don't have the list of all of them, but there's four or five. And these are the people that we buy the comics from. Like these are the creators that we seek out their stories. And we've been reading, and certainly if you're a comics fan, this is not news, that the way that the corporate-owned comics, DC and Marvel, and then some of the others, that corporate ownership of their property means that the creators, the writers, the artists, everybody like that is the hired help. And if you happen to come up with $1 billion idea for these guys, they'll say, "Thank you very much. Here's your page rate." If they're feeling generous, they will give you a check that says, or maybe they'll invite you to the premiere of the film featuring your character or storyline. But they're under no obligation, moral or otherwise, I guess, to pay these guys for their contributions to the corporate-owned IP. So that's a good deal if you are content to make your money on the page rates and everything. But the problem is, after you've sold, 1 million Batman comics, you've brought the X-Men back, or you've made your bones, telling these kind of stories, and you've got other stuff that you want to do, it's almost necessary to go and take it somewhere else. So, there are established comics publishers that have good creator-owned models, Image, Dark Horse, a lot of publishers have options and things like that. But we're starting to see these new platforms that are arising for this. So that's a long preamble for this for the people that aren't totally.
Well, but specifically with Substack, as I understand it, this is a newsletter generating a platform that a lot of journalists who either have been canceled or downsized went to, and they offer subscription rates to keep doing the same kind of journalism they've been doing, or opinion pieces. Andrew Sullivan is a big name that is at Substack, for example.
Yeah, so it made big news on the journalism side. So it's been around, I think, since 2017 or 2018. It's basically like a platform where writers write what they want to write, and then people pay a monthly subscription rate. So you get the first couple for free, but then if you're really interested in the writer, then you follow them. So it's very much like Patreon.
Yes.
And the model of people writing what you want to write is very much like blogging. So okay, they've invented blogging, they've invented Patreon, they've sort of merged these two things together, and it became a big deal in journalism earlier this year because there's the founders of I want to say Axios, but that's not right. Of one of these.
Vice?
It was the one with Ezra Klein and Matt Iglesias and these guys that they started up this thing, and so Iglesias is one of the people that moved off of that platform, and he's a sort of I would say he's a center left, and he's been moving closer to center. Or even a little bit right center, and he was writing for a platform that's very progressive, and he was kind of getting out of step with that. He's one of the founders of this. Sorry if somebody's listening knows what I'm talking about and can refresh my memory what the name of his original company was. Anyway, he departed as a founder and moved over to Substack, and they paid him reportedly like $250,000 to do his blogging, and it turned out that he ended up taking a bad deal, that actually the amount of subscription revenue that he was generating, if he had taken the subscription revenue only deal, he would have been doing much better than this. So a bunch of other journalists, Glenn Greenwald is another guy, Sullivan, you had mentioned Barry Weiss, who used to be with the New York Times. So it's like all of these people that for one reason or another are not happy with the publishing journalism model, or journalism is not happy with them. There's an alternative. And for journalism, this is great because journalism is a house on fire. That whole business has been...
Yeah.
Right. It's been a wreck for 20 years.
20 years. Absolutely, man.
The people that run those businesses will do anything except change. And, they're working with all this stuff. So fine. So Substack comes and it provides an outlet for brand name journalists to do this stuff. Over the summer, they hired Nick Spencer, the, Marvel and
Spider-Man writer, among others.
Spider-Man writer, very on-brand hire for these guys because they like the sort of edgy contrarian people, and that's a brand that Nick has established for himself in the comics. To set up their comics business. And you're thinking, what comics business? Because if you look at the site, it's good for reading text. It's not so good for reading pictures. So they're going to do like inline JPEGs and stuff like that. Snyder is smart. Snyder is doing he's doing his comics with Comixology, because Comixology does have a really good platform for reading comics digitally. And then he's doing an online how to write class on Substack. And that's he's a very strategic guy, and he's looking at this very entrepreneurially. And these other guys are coming over and they've promised some really good stuff. And the reason they're going, frankly, as they've said in their own posts, is because the money is really good. And who can argue with that? And they get complete creative control. They own the copyrights to what they're doing. They can put it online, and then next month they can take the book and put it out with Image or something like that, or they can do a trade paperback, right? So these guys do not own any part of the print rights. It's an incredibly sweet deal. It's really good. I don't blame these guys for doing it.
No.
And frankly, to me, it's a shame that the regular comics business cannot provide the top names in the business with the combination of creative control and financial security that they deserve for doing the caliber of work that they're doing.
I agree. And it's great for those elite that can elicit this kind of deal. And it is a very narrow 1% that is taking advantage of this opportunity. There is a reality that the owners of the two major publishers, they don't, I mean, as well, in fairness, you can categorize each relationship differently. But in the case of DC, I mean, my God, AT&T takes over Time Warner, immediately hands things off to this Discovery Plus. It seems like all that's still being figured out.
Unfortunately, it wasn't immediately. It was 2 long years.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Well,
see, Ron, this is why I'm talking to you.
while
Go ahead.
DC
Yeah.
while DC bled out all of its institutional knowledge and everything. And it's like there was this interview with Jim Lee and the new folks over at DC last week, and it's like, everybody was dissing that interview. I thought it was a step up from his interview last year when we were left asking the question, well, is DC going to be publishing comics? It sounded like a cry for help. This one, at least they're making the right noises.
Characterize, because I haven't read it, Rob. So give me a synopsis of.
I mean, it's very corporate speak, but it's like last year I went through for ICV2 and I wrote this thing and I said this is kind of alarming that Jim was almost like publicly imploring the people that it really is a good idea to keep publishing comics. Like that was it was a little disconcerting because I think he was obviously trying to put the positive spin on it, and maybe things are better there than they look. I mean, who knows? But this year, okay, so they come out with the new brand general manager, and Warner Media, which is the group, they're treating it like a business unit. They're treating the characters like they're licensing their own properties almost. I mean, it's like they're brand managing this stuff. You may not like that. It may not sound like, wow, that sounds a little prefabricated and everything, but having a plan is better than like wondering where you're going to be. So I found that the general expression of, look, this is what we're going to do with direct market. This is what we're going to do with, I thought Jim's remarks about not every creator, relative to what we were just talking about, not every creator wants to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes you just want to draw comics. And so, he's positioning Vertigo as sort of a concierge service enabled, creator owned environment, which is really smart. Like that, if I worked at DC, that's how I'd say it, because that's the argument they've got. So I'd like, at least there's an active caring about what's going to happen to DC evident now that was less evident to me last year.
I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. I don't agree with a lot of what Jim comes out with. He's obviously up against the wall in terms of what can he say positively. His the DC online events they've done the last couple summers, when he's led the rah-rah cheer and stuff, that's fine. But there is obviously a lot of people who had DC exclusives. I'm sure it was a combination of them wanting to get out of there and also DC going, we're not going to offer exclusives. We can't offer exclusives anymore. I'm assuming that's even more the case.
I think this is a byproduct of a lot of the guys that left that understood that end of the business really well, and they understood all the moving parts there, and that something that looks like it's a good idea at the senior VP level, once you get down to having to implement that with retailers, direct market, conventions, all of these different stakeholders, suddenly not so easy. And that's the unfortunate part. Now DC just announced this deal with Webtoon the other day, which again, it's like this is a smart move. Webtoon is a completely different audience. And if you want to continue the pipeline of DC fans, you can't start them on Black Label. I'm sorry. It's like, you gotta have these on-ramps. And it's like if they're watching Teen Titans Go and they're reading like Swamp Thing Kid and all of these great YA books that they're doing, the next step for a lot of these people that are tweens and teens, they're not reading comics at the comic store. They're not even reading Comixology. They're scrolling on their cell phones panel by panel, and that's the Webtoon model. And if DC wants to put it's not competing with anything because this is a non-reachable audience by comic stores. And if 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 people that read this on Webtoons go into a comic shop and say, "Do you have any Batman? I'd like to read the grown-up version."
Yeah.
Then who loses? Who loses there?
Absolutely, man. No, you got to go where the kids are. And again, like you were saying about the YA books and everything, no, this is something that they've been aware of. And prior to all the various corporate shakeups, we're certainly trying to, with Zoom and some of their other imprints, go in that direction. So I can't blame them for.
But the larger issue is what we were talking about, that if you create some valuable IP for DC and they end up making a movie or a TV show or a cartoon out of it or something like that, you can't count on that revenue. So that's what's driving, I think, a lot of these guys to go into Substack. And the issue that I have with Substack is not the model for creators. It's great for them. But these guys are playing with somebody else's money right now.
Right.
The reason why the regular comic market isn't paying these guys more is because not enough people are buying comics. That's like,
sure.
if you have to make payroll out of your month-to-month sales, and you don't have some venture capitalist standing behind you with a bottomless checkbook to say, go out and corner the market in comics talent, price no object. It's two entirely different games. And it's like those of us with long memories remember, there was CrossGen that came in and tried to do this in the early 2000s. But even before CrossGen, I think they had corporate ownership. Like CrossGen was complicated. But the direct analog to me was a company called Tundra, which was in the early 90s. It's founded by Kevin Eastman with all that sweet, sweet turtle money. And his mission was the same thing. He's like, boy, the creator model sucked. Like, we need to do better for creators. We need to put out better comics. I'm going to put together this Murderer's Row. And he got Alan Moore and Bill Sienkiewicz and all these guys. And they made these beautiful books. And, price was no object. And maybe it should have been because, they ran through the money and then that was the end of the story.
Yeah. I mean, obviously
with Substack, it's that, except there's no nice comics. It's just JPEGs.
As you said, JPEGs. Now, obviously, that's the I have no idea. Do you know for a fact that's the end result and they aren't going to innovate in any way?
That's what Tinian said. I'm sure that they're making investments in their platform. But Comixology is 15 years ahead of them in display technology for comics online, mobile, and web.
That's
Webtoon is 10 to 12 years ahead, Tapas, all of these places. Even the late lamented Madefire, like these people that were in this game before at least had a plan to make the comics interesting for the digital reader. And I'm not seeing that, and I'm not seeing this great groundswell of demand for people who want to read comics 3 pages at a time in your email.
Well, and again, we don't know how they're going to distribute them. What level of, are we going to get a monthly issue? I don't, or a weekly, like you said, excerpts. I have no idea. I look forward to talking to James and, John Hickman and Scott and Nick and everyone else that's involved. Even, through a couple of emails to people like Oming, who's going to draw one of James's books that is going to be the Substack book.
So I'm very interested in the artist perspective because
this
whole thing is a writer play.
Yes.
It's a journalistic platform. It's a word-first platform. They saw great success with this model with newsletters and journalists and stuff like that. And they hired Spencer, who's a writer, to bring in other writers. And so it's all about, if the stories are good, people will come and they'll put up with whatever experience we give them for the art. And comics are a visual medium. And I'm not sure they've thought that all the way through on that end of it. I hope they have. I hope these guys can make money. I hope that there's a new option for fans that want to read work by these people. I'm not rooting for their failure or anything. I'm just giving it a little bit of a side eye because it's very buzzy VC flavor of the month. It's detached from market realities right now, but it can't stay detached from market realities forever. So once the training wheels come off, do they go into the ditch?
When we see the product, we'll see if it's worth it or not. And it's these early adopters that will let us know, hey, this is great or not worth the $8 a month that I'm spending to follow you or whatever, or the yearly amount. I do know that we're talking about significant seed money from Substack to each creator. These are mid six-figure numbers, as I've learned.
And God knows they've earned it.
Sure.
Again, they say it's the shame of the comics market itself that it can't pay them, these guys, in the general course of business and give them decent terms, because the quality of the work and the effort that goes into it is every bit as much as stuff that's getting there. And these guys shouldn't have to leave writing comics to write for TV or to do, to write for video games or to write, they shouldn't have to take their talents elsewhere.
Yeah.
To make a living. And so
you're right, and then again, it's we're looking at $4 and $5.99 comic books. We're looking at $7.99 comic books, and I don't know if that's worth it to a lot of average readers. I don't even know where current numbers are now. I mean, we all hear, and truly, that through COVID, comics in general has had a great 18 months in terms of sales and things, and that's wonderful in the macro. But in the micro, tell me how the numbers have been.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the book and the I mean, I think they're like last I saw from ICV2 is that 2020 was up about 10% across the board. Digital was also up for the first time in a while. So digital download to own, not digital subscriptions, which are their own thing, but like the standard Comixology model, that's been flat for years, or it's been trickling up. Last year it was big. Obviously, you don't want to leave the house, so you want to get your comics, so you get them. And this was the retailer's nightmare, that they would be substituting. But again, it looks like digital comics, regular comics go up in tandem. It's not a zero-sum game thing.
Yeah.
And again, this is where I salute DC and also Marvel with their deal with Scholastic they are trying to expand the market from the bottom. And the people like us that like the old stuff have got to let them do that. Even if they're making creative decisions that the old guard doesn't agree with, or they're interpreting characters in ways that get up people's butts about stuff. It's like, whatever. It doesn't matter. New readers are new readers. Let them come in. They'll find the old good stuff. Trust them to make up their own minds. But you can't sustain the industry on a bunch of gray-haired old white guys.
100%, man. And speaking as one of those people, I agree with you absolutely. But also, don't sacrifice your older base for the new stuff. You have product for both. You mentioned Black Label earlier, and that's great. It's a great innovation. It gives us something to read. And also, you mentioned creators not being properly compensated when their stuff makes millions, if not billions. I just talked to John Ostrander on Tuesday, and it shocked me that there is not a Suicide Squad John Ostrander book. And I'm happy as hell for Brian Azzarello doing a Black Label Suicide Squad book, and all the other newer writers that have had their turns with the squad. But it's like, John deserves a gig out of this, and more than just a red carpet victory lap. And I mean, he's getting royalties from the old stuff, and I'm glad they're...
His cameo?
Talk to me.
Did you catch his cameo in the
beginning? No,
John. Blink and you miss it, but he's going to get SAG after residuals from
that. I'm so glad, because honestly, I did bring that up to him on Tuesday, and said, do you qualify? And he's like, I got to look into that. So I'm so glad to hear that he did, and that's the case. That's wonderful.
It made the final cut, at least the one that I saw. I mean, it's not like a feature thing. It was like Starlin and the Avengers and stuff like that. And that made Starlin like super happy, and God bless him. I mean, like, more than anybody, the brains behind the, that series of Avengers movies and that whole story arc. But it's like, so the other part is that it's really hard. Like, if I walk into a comic shop, I haven't tried to do this in particular to buy a Suicide Squad, but I did ask at my local comic shop, can I get Eternals omnibus, like a Jack Kirby Eternals book? Looks it up. He says it's back ordered. It'll be a couple of months. I'm like, but the movie's coming out. Like, so when The Boys TV show came out, before anybody knew if anybody was going to watch The Boys, Dynamite bet the farm on overprinting those omnibuses, making sure that they were ready, that they were in the pipeline, so that as soon as fans saw this show, they would go in, and they hit the jackpot. I mean, the sales on that book were through the roof. But that took some balls from Nick to make that bet. And it's like, if Dynamite can do it, why can't Marvel do that? Why can't
I think you know the answer to that question. I bet the people more directly in the day-to-day operations of Marvel and DC are requesting it from the upper management, and the likelihood is that, well, we'll wait and see. I don't know. Well, let's see where the numbers are, because I mean, really, especially in the case of AT&T, it's all about the bean counting.
Yes,
and they really don't care about the content.
But I think they're out of the picture for the most part. I don't know that much about Discovery. But yeah, but I mean, Marvel, whether Marvel has money or not, like, saving the last penny matters a lot to Marvel too, especially on the publishing side. So I think, and also honestly, I don't mean to. There are other issues in the supply chain right now, so it's like it's hard to get books printed. There's other So perhaps not their fault. So withdraw the may not
frustration,
be knuckleheaded business decisions. It could just be the times we live in.
Yeah.
If so, that's too bad, because I want to read an Eternals omnibus right now.
Well, yeah, no, I know, and you're right about that. And it's interesting to watch who's smart and who's nimble and can react to the market and make the bet that Barucci and Dynamite did with the boys. And again, for whatever reasons, that Marvel isn't ready with the big honking Eternal stuff. I have no idea from the trade side what's going on in terms of what's available right now and not. And again, there's always digital. I was talking to Ostrander, and one of his great series that hadn't been collected since its first trades, if there were even trades back then, Wasteland from the 80s, that great horror series that he did with Del Close co-writing and guest star incredible artists and it was it was pre-Vertigo, but it's a very ultra Vertigo, uber violent, uber scary. It was a really amazing series, and they just started putting it back out digitally on Comixology DC, and I assume that a trade is coming.
I don't know that one. I'll have to check it out. I liked his Spectre from the 90s.
Of course,
that was classic, and that was
there's
a character I think they could do something with, especially that version of it.
Oh, no question. And again, we talked about that as well. No, man, and we had that Guardian article that came out a couple of weeks ago that hey, thanks for creating this $1 billion character. Here's $5,000, and you'll get your name credited at the end of the movie. And it's a shame. I mean, God, we know, the late great Len Wein, Hugh Jackman kind of guilted Marvel and Disney into giving him a nice payday before he passed away, when Jackman was on the red carpet for Logan and pointed out Len in the audience. And it's like, I would not be here right now if it weren't for that man, and really made focus out of it. And really, poor Len had, tough medical trouble his entire life, but especially the last couple of years. So it was nice that, he got this cushion when he really needed it and everything. But that's a rare exception. And again, I point to Ostrander. I mean, I didn't want to get into financials because I didn't want it to even be too painful. And luckily he recognizes the benefits of the whole Suicide Squad experience that he's currently enjoying. It's like I told Dave Gibbons years ago. I'm like, you're never going to get what you really deserved. I mean, and he and Alan still get the royalties from Watchmen and all that. I said, but something they can't take away from you, and now is part of your arsenal. You could walk into any Hollywood meeting and be, hi, I'm Dave Gibbons. You might have heard of me. I created something called Watchmen, and you might want to take a meeting with me. And he's like, no, he goes, I can't deny that. Of course, I mean, there you go. And so, but again, it'd be nice to get the right amount of compensation. I don't know what the answer is, again, because this comes up every couple of years.
Yeah. And
I don't know how much is done with it. And in fact, John and other creators were pointing to when Paul Levitz was running DC, he was very mindful of that. And I even remember during the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, talking to random creators from Neil Adams to Jeff Loeb and others and Chuck Dixon. And it's like, oh yeah, they used that little bit in the Batman movies, and therefore I got this 5-figure check. And it really was this, like, okay, it was more than $5,000.
And that's not just that, it was like, like if a toy was made or any licensing revenue. No, Paul was really, I mean, that is really something to be proud of his legacy. The problem was that it was at his discretion, right? I mean, and it's not like he was picking and choosing. That was his policy, but it wasn't corporate policy.
Right.
So after Paul left, there came a pharaoh who knew not Joseph, and then and then you're back building the pyramids again,
right.
And that's
no, it's shitty as hell. And in fact, in other forms, previous decades, it was just as simple as, hey, your page rate went too high. We can't afford you anymore. We're going to go to this next generation who's going to be happy to working for us at a lesser rate. And we're kind of seeing the purge of the old guard, whether it was on purpose or not. Although, and it's very interesting, I won't name names. One creator pointed to me in terms of DC is discriminating in a different way now. Yeah, they're being inclusive when it comes to people of color and women and the like. Now it's ageism. That's the new discrimination. And I'm like, interesting. And it's bona fide creators that know what they're doing and can put out a very competent, fun book still. So it's very, very interesting.
Staffers too, you get to a certain level of compensation, and they start adding up the numbers on it. It's an unfortunate situation. And unfortunately, it's like in the comics world, the solution to that is when somebody drives a truck full of money into the business and says, hey, we're going to like launch a new platform, take the money. That's the best you can do.
Of course.
And whether you're a creator or whether you're a publisher that owns the company and a foreign investor comes in and says, wow, we hear that you've got like a whole bunch of marketable IP. Like, can we buy you for 20 times what you're worth? Yeah, sure. Take the money. So that's one way to do it. And that sort of segues to it. Like there is another mechanism that has emerged in the last year as a way for creators to get paid. And unfortunately, it's gotten tied up in a lot of sort of political and technology complications. And to me, that's very unfortunate because it seems like whether it's a sustainable solution or whether it's a long-term solution it solves a lot of problems in the collecting, publishing, creator rights, all of this stuff business. But as I said, it's complicated, and that's NFTs. I warned you I was going to raise this topic.
I wanted to talk about NFTs, please, because honestly, it perplexed me for a good portion of the first half of the year. I think I have a better handle on it, but please tell me about the NFTs from your perspective.
So I've been following the futures. I come into this whole racket I was not on the comics side. I'm a fan. I love this stuff. I've got a basement full of old comics. I didn't work professionally in anything resembling the comics industry. For the first 25 years of my career, I was dealing with technology companies and doing like future trends modeling. And I did big projects for Microsoft on like what was technology going to look like in 20 years and all of this stuff. So I guess my technical training was in spotting stuff that's coming on the horizon and thinking through what is this actually going to mean for business. So in my Comic-Con and Business and Pop Culture book, which is, God help me, going on 10 years old now.
Yeah.
But at that, so I due for an update. The emergence of digital comics was just starting to happen at that time. I thought, well, this is really interesting because it solves the problems of distribution, availability, convenience. Digital comics don't go out of print. Like there's all kinds of advantages to them. But as a collector, you don't have ownership of that. You're basically renting these comics from
the platform.
You can buy the PDFs and everything. Like there's ways to do it, but they have no value because the copy of any digital item is exactly the same as the original. So they're all in mint condition. They don't have any value because they can always make more of them and stuff like that. Was there some way that we could establish value and ownership over digital content? Because the other really nasty problem out there is that people, like they'll do artwork and they'll end up having the artwork taken off their Instagram, and somebody does a T-shirt or a mug or unlicensed merchandise, pirated prints in, having to prove that you're the authentic owner of this thing, or that that this guy does not have rights to duplicate your work. Huge pain in the ass. So is there a way to create some kind of provenance, ownership, all of this stuff? And the answer is yes. It came down to this technology called blockchain, which is up until recently been mostly used on the financial services side. And then a few years ago, they came up with this way that you can put other kinds of content. So like there's Bitcoin, which is just like a unit of exchange, right? It's a unit of digital currency, but it's not anything. It's just a Bitcoin. It's like, so, but you can attach media to this. You can attach imagery or music or like a video clip or any of this stuff. And by virtue of doing this, I don't want to get into like the whole underlying technology part of it, but the idea is that each item can have one and only one owner at a time. And you can go and check it. It's on an open ledger, and you can see, is this one that I've got authentic or not? And it'll trace every transaction on this item back to the point of origin, and you can authenticate in an instant whether this is a real thing or a copy. Does it matter? Well, does it matter if you own the original Mona Lisa or a print? To some people, if you just want it on your wall, it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
If you're a collector and you say, this is a 1 in 200 variant cover. Even though it's digital, I can guarantee you that there's only 50 real ones of these, even if you could run off color copies of it or whatever. So NFTs are the way that this happens. So there's a bunch of companies that are starting to do this. They're creating this IP. They're creating digital collectibles around NFTs, and they're very inexpensive to produce. They're extremely inexpensive to distribute. They not only pay the creator in the first sale, but they pay everybody. So if there's a creator, a rights holder, a distributor, if there's like all of these middlemen, you can write into the code of the NFT that the minute that money gets dispersed out of this, everybody gets their beak wet to the degree that they're entitled to off of this thing. It's called a smart contract. And then every subsequent sale. So the stories of the artists who let an original page go at a convention for a few $100 because they needed the money. Then a few years later, it shows up at auction for $25,000, $100,000. You know, how much of that does the artist see? Nothing. In this example, every time that resells, so if you sell it cheap in the first instance, and then it keeps getting more valuable because your reputation grows, you, the creator, benefit from that. This is all a great deal. The problem is that and it's probably no secret to many of the listeners here, once this became sort of widely known, people sort of peeled off the lid of what's going on. How does this technology work? And it turns out that blockchain technology, particularly the blockchain that runs Bitcoin in the financial side, is very energy intensive, because the math that keeps this whole thing running requires, millions and millions of computer cycles and stuff like that. And the way that it's set up is that if you participate in that economy, you get rewarded by getting like Bitcoin. You get like little VIG off to the side every so often through the system. So it's sucked in all of these people that are trying to make money off of this. And it's scaled beyond the capacity of it's consuming a lot of energy.
Yeah, and it's the environment, the platform to generate this stuff and to trade it and everything. And the other problem is the fact that all right, like in a hypothetical, I'm Alex Ross. I've created this great image for DC that they passed on as a cover, but they still haven't. I got paid for my work for hire and stuff. Does Alex Ross get compensated should DC want to put out the NFT? Because not only is it creators that are generating NFTs on their own, but also now I know that DC and Marvel is looking at their inventory and making these decisions as well. And is the artist being compensated? Because they're kind of at the mercy of the publisher. And I mean, I've been on forums at Clubhouse where this discussion has gone on, between creators.
Look, it's a sketchy thing about, I think that DC could say, if you're buying that Alex Ross Wonder Woman or Starfire or something like that,
yeah,
who's to say whether you're buying it because you're a fan of Alex Ross or you're a fan of the character? They have a legitimate interest in that. If Alex Ross is doing some IP that he owns or something, some license that he has clear title to, I think he does stuff with David Bowie or something like that.
Right.
So he does other kinds of stuff.
Sure.
And so if you can do stuff that's like pure Alex Ross, and I think Bill Sienkiewicz is probably a better example of this, because Bill does like a whole bunch of non-comic stuff that's in his distinctive style. And it's like, you don't have to be a fan of Elektra or New Mutants or something like that to want to have that work in your house. So it's like, it just depends on the artist. But yeah, I mean, that's a matter for the lawyers, and I think they will figure that end of it out. But the environmental stuff is more troublesome because,
of course,
we got one planet, right? So, and I think that the people that have raised this did a very smart thing to do it, because the technologists would have never considered this. And certainly the financial people wouldn't have considered it. And so by raising this as an issue, what they've done is they've accelerated the, urgency on the technology side to solve this problem.
Interesting.
So here's the thing. First of all, 99.9% of what they're worried about on the environmental stuff is Bitcoin, which is its own blockchain. And there's like trillions of dollars in it. It's like, that's the financial industry. And if these people care that much about the planet, that would be the first time. So you want to apply pressure to those people, apply pressure to PayPal and Bank of America and, like all of these large financial institutions that are, starting to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrency an important part of their financial picture.
Agreed.
Over here, this tiny little fingernail-sized slice of the market of NFTs that's not paying bankers, it's paying artists. and it's on a separate technology called Ethereum. Currently, Ethereum has the same problem, but Ethereum, there is a technical solution in sight that will dramatically reduce the computational footprint of how the Ethereum security works, and consequently, that energy consumption number is going to go way down. They say, well, it hasn't happened yet, and that's true. And the more this is a pain in the ass for the people trying to make money in this business, the faster it's going to happen. I've heard that it may be as early as the beginning of the year that they will switch over to this, and then this will become, if not a non-issue, certainly much less of an issue on that side. The problem is that attitudes about this have hardened to such a degree that this is not a reasonable discussion about problems and solutions anymore. It's like, if you're engaged in this business, you're evil, you shouldn't be doing it, like, we're going to run you out of town for doing it. And that's really unfortunate, because they're picking on these people like, yeah, we know you're starving, but don't drink that water. Like, that comes from bad people. You know, I wish that they could take yes for an answer on this, because not only is change coming, but individual companies are doing better on this. They're mitigating the environmental impact. You say, well, they wouldn't need to mitigate if they weren't causing a problem in the first place, which is true. But at the end of the day, the net result is what's important, right? So it's like, if they're carbon neutral or carbon negative because they're planting trees or buying carbon credits or whatever mechanism they can use, well, what are the people that are printing comics and by the thousands and flying them to distribution centers and trucking them to comic stores, and thousands of people driving to their comic store and picking those books up? What are those people doing to mitigate that? Like, there's everything has a cost to it. So it's like, I hope the temperature on this comes down. And full disclosure, I'm actually working in consultation with some of these companies, not because I'm like shilling for it, but because I genuinely believe that this is one of the better ways forward for creators and for the business, if they can solve that. So, you know, well, I get it that people are pissed off about it. I hope they can, when they see that they're not going to be pushing too hard on an open door, because they, believe me, coming from the side of the technology business, they hear you. We don't want this.
Well, that's good.
Bad stuff, like, you know. So
no, that part of it is good. I'll tell you again, and this is me as a reader, and I don't know, you know, other people may obviously would likely do feel differently. I hate variant covers. I'm for, you make something, make it available to everybody, and don't tell me, well, you know, for this special cover you got to spend, you know, $15 extra or whatever. Bullshit. You know, just you know, but and if I may, and I'll finish, and that is, yeah. So the NFT smack of that, and also hearing the forum that I did, and I was just a fly on the wall trying to understand all this stuff, listening to creators go back and forth, and the fact that there were already plans to release NFTs from DC and Marvel from a named creator who did not have, they had no plans of involving them from a financial standpoint. And it's like, that is wrong. And also, I mentioned Alex Ross. Now, Alex and a couple other people do license their DC and Marvel images so that they can make lithographs and prints. And I would imagine NFTs likely fall. In fact, one creator said that currently NFTs were under the same kind of contracts as toys would be.
Yes,
and then, you know,
licensed merchandise. That's what it is.
Yes. So as long as the creators are being taken care of in this way, I'll grit my teeth and live with it. Again, I'm like, make it available to everybody. I appreciate that NFTs represent a unique digital version that you can document and everything.
And and if you're tired of it, you can sell it to somebody that wants it more than you. Which you
and the artist will continue to make money off of it as well, each transaction. I get all that. I think from a general standpoint, that sounds great. The energy concerns are legit. I believe you when you say that a lot of the people involved are doing everything they can to fix that problem quickly. And you're right. It's an interesting other way for artists to make money. And they're the ones that I think are the most financially challenged because of their inability to only do so much work each month as opposed to a writer that can write 4 books a month, depending on their own disciplines and abilities and stuff. Whereas an artist is like, hey, man, to crank out 20 pages, I need 30 days.
Well, they need it if they're working on pencil and paper, which they're going to do if they want to turn around and sell the original page at a convention. You can probably double your productivity if you're working digitally. Tools for digital are great.
Sure they are.
If you do it, then you don't have that original to sell. So you're thinking, okay, I can like max out my page rate but not have like residual value, or so this solves the other problem where like the companies say the original artwork is the property of the artist to sell it. They have a special exemption on that. So notwithstanding derivative works, prints, licensed merchandise, whatever, that I'll leave to the lawyers. But if they do the same deal with the original digital pages as they do with the original print pages and say, you can sell a digital 1-of-1 for a page that you did with us on the same terms that you can sell your paper copy.
Yeah.
That's it. You can't do a limited series of it. You can't reproduce it. You can't make other stuff with it, but you can sell the page that you drew that we paid you to draw. Even that, to me, would be a step forward on it. On the other issue, on the desirability, I mean, the thing is, I'm with you. Like I think variant covers and all that stuff is a huge waste of time. But for the fan that wants it, they want it. And to me, it would be a lot better to cut the retailer out of this situation, so the retailer doesn't have to order all of these copies to get that one for the guy that wants it. And so all right, so they mark it up so that it makes sense financially. But then you're stuck with all this extra inventory and
right. And for people who don't know, it's, hey, we got an amazing Spider-Man variant cover that you could sell at your store, but to get that, you're going to need to order 100 extra copies of Squirrel Girl, number 8, to qualify for that. I mean, just low selling books to justify you getting the variant. That's the store's obligation, and then of course to recoup that, it's obviously however much he's can find through his customers how to mark up the variant cover to offset that cost and make a profit.
Or if you say, but I mean, if you make that digital and you say you have a QR code or a scratch off or something like that on the individual book, and you say 1 in 10 of these books on the shelf has a QR code for the variant cover, but we're going to have to tell you which one it is. The retailer just orders what they order. Maybe their customers get lucky, but it'll drive people into the store to buy the physical product, the people that want that. And it doesn't burden the retailer with having to be the middleman for that very edge case transaction in the comics business. The publishers can profit off of the fans that want that, and they can leave the retailer out of it. To me, that feels like a win. I don't know the retail side enough to know whether that's a clean win for the retailer or not, but from what I've heard from people, it's like, I know some retailers that would forsake dealing with the pain in the ass must have every variant cover customer to not have to deal with the ordering and all of the other overhead and inventory stuff that comes with that. So that's one way to offload it. And then on the collectible side, again, it's like, have you seen what's going on in the collectible market? I mean, people have lots of money. And frankly, I think some of this money comes from, if you bought Bitcoin in 2015 or 2016, you're playing with the house's money right now, no matter how up and down it goes. If you bought Bitcoin at like $500, you're doing okay. And so you're looking at Alex Ross originals and saying, yeah, that would look great on my wall, because why not? It's 8 Bitcoin or whatever.
Sure. No, understood.
So,
yeah.
So getting that money into the market and into a way that the creators can benefit from it, again, to me, feels like a win.
Understood. I also, again, in these last 18 months or so, the alternatives to publishing through a regular traditional way, through Diamond or whatever, we've seen Panel Syndicate success. We've seen, you had a great article about how Tapas was just bought by, what's that?
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, tell me the name of the company that bought Tapas and everything.
Name of the company that bought Tapas. It is a large Korean company. It is the big competitor to the owner of Webtoon, basically.
Okay.
So one company in Korea is like the Facebook, Google, Amazon, and these guys are like the Microsoft, whatever. Like, I mean, they're like Clash of the Titans type at Microsoft, Apple, like, so whatever combination of Disney, whatever combination of giant companies over there. So it's not Line. So the same company that owns Line also owns Webtoon. So again, I'm sorry, I don't have these names.
That's all right, man. No. And
go
on.
So they've been doing incredible business with Webtoon, like hundreds of millions of page views, and hits, lots of revenue, lots of they're developing media properties off of this. I wrote a story. I about this romantic comedy on Webtoon that is just got optioned actually by the Bad Idea guys. They have a film production company called like All Nighter, I think it's called. Anyway, They hold on. Let me see if I can get this in front of me. So I wrote a story that they had optioned this romantic comedy from Webtoon, and it's in my Twitter mentions here.
Sure, buddy.
Hold on.
By the way, for everyone wondering why I keep looking off screen, my Wi-Fi it's holding, thank God, but it's scaring me with what looks like a flicker. So every now and then I'm looking at my tower to make sure that everything's fine from the connection. So Rob, be ready to vamp if I drop for a second. But so far things have been fine, so I don't think we're going to have an issue.
Okay, so this thing is called Let's Play. Is the name of this property on Webtoon.
Okay.
So I had never heard of it because I'm like a 50-year-old guy and I don't read Webtoon.
I'm with you. Yeah, Jesus, man.
But I'm in the minority on this because lots and lots of people write this. So I got this press release. It was the end of the month. I owed Forbes one more story. I said, the next good press release I get, I'm going to write this story. So I wrote the story. I said, hey, Webtoon romantic comedy optioned for TV development. This was the biggest social hit I ever got. It got retweeted like 15,000 times. It had this enormous footprint. People come out of the woodwork because the creator of the thing is this young woman, retweeted it to her, 1.3 million followers, and then like this thing just blows up. I had no idea how gigantic the impact was. So, but that should have prepared me because the next week, Tapas got acquired in a deal with Kakao Entertainment.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Kakao. Should remember that. Kakao Entertainment.
I could have wrote it down. Go on.
$580 million. It's the largest transaction in the comics space since Marvel bought Disney for Tapas, which is a wonderful company. Founded, the CEO is a great guy, visionary guy, has a real idea of like future of storytelling on this platform.
Sure.
Got a great business plan, but Jesus, man, $500 million for this. Why? Because the audience that this attracts and the numbers that they're seeing going up and the model of how they monetize this content and how they've created this conveyor belt of aspiring young teenage artists who frankly aren't ready for prime time.
Absolutely.
Getting to build an audience, find their voice, find their tribe, and then these platforms will look down, they'll look at the numbers and they say, this looks really good. Let us give you a little bit of editorial guidance for free to punch this up and see if we can't get your, 15,000 followers to 150,000 followers. And they know what works. They're like Netflix. They've got all the data. They know all the levers to push and pull. They'll take writers that are writing fan fiction and light novels just in prose, and they'll put them together with an artist that's doing really good work but probably needs a writing partner to really shine. Like they're using this as a lab to cook up all of this new stuff, and it's working.
Yep.
And it's so it's very interesting, and it's completely invisible to the
direct market.
It's certainly invisible to the direct market, but just to comics fandom in general.
Sure.
It's seen as a thing by itself. It's not. It's comics. And
100%. Absolutely. And a lot of our favorite Wednesday Warrior direct market creators are going into this space. Katie Cook is there, and Dean Haspiel is there. Sarah Dyer and Milk and Cheese, Evan Dorkin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're there, and also as I hold my iPhone for the audio audience who can't see me right now, it's everybody reading on their phones, and it's South Korea was literally 10 years ahead of us as far as consuming media on their phones, more so than their computers and laptops, because they're just more people that have the phones and everything, and they're well used to reading manga and novels and getting content on their phones. And yeah, it's just the explosion of webtoons and now tapas has been amazing to see. And it's something that I dip into occasionally, and talking to various creators that are there that also, again, are represented by their former work in the Big Two or even their current work at the Big Two. So it's very interesting. And also, again, talking to people, I keep bringing up Brubaker because of his great success over the last 18 months. And, what started off as a distribution concern because he had a bunch of books coming like Pulp and things like that were in the pipeline, but didn't make it to the market until last summer. And then making that decision to stop doing monthly episodes of his stuff and go right to graphic novels. What amazing success he and Sean Phillips have had with the Reckless series.
Absolutely. The other one it was very interesting to me is Simon Hanselman, the underground cartoonist, did this thing Crisis Zone, which was this like sort of daily strip on during the pandemic that viewers strongly cautioned content-wise on this stuff because it's way over the line, but it's hilarious. And he put this out on Instagram, like 3 panels or 4 panels at a time, every day. People would read it. It just came out in a print edition from Fantagraphics. My latest Forbes story is a review of this that if I do say so myself, is one of the better things I've written in a while. It inspired the extreme quality of this thing inspired me to find words to talk about it. But anyway, it's very entertaining. But this is the model that he did, and he's continuing to serialize his stuff on Instagram, not even a paid platform as far as I know.
Right.
But whatever, he's got like his 10,000 people that read it, and then the book comes out. He's already done the work. I mean, the models are changing, and for him, like he has agents and he's like an international guy, so he has different ways of doing that. But it's good that they're resourceful. But coming back to Jim Lee's point, it is true. Not every artist is an entrepreneur. Not every artist wants the hassle of having to do that. The good news is, there are improvements to the Kickstarter model that are coming. Like there are things that, I think Ron Morris and some other folks are doing like a Kickstarter alternative on this thing called Zoop right now. That's very interesting.
What's your opinion of Zoop? Tell me.
Well, I've been in. So full disclosure, I've been talking to Jordan about it. On the down low. I'm actually trying to decide whether or not to put real money into it. That's how much I think of it. I think it's a really good idea. I think it solves the biggest problem with Kickstarter, which is this whole not everybody is a Renaissance man. Like a great artist is not always a great business person,
right?
And nobody that is either of those things wants to be stuffing packages in your living room for all this time. And then also, once the Kickstarter is done, how do you get the book in Diamond? How do you get it in Ingram? How do you get it in libraries? How do you get it on bookstore shelves? Like, there's got to be a way to connect the dots around that. That's sort of a integrated platform. And frankly, there's got to be a way to, look into this without seeing a million random projects and just have it focused on these are the 10 ones that we're running with, from our curated creators. I think it's a good alternative. I think Kickstarter is great for what it does, but it's being asked to do stuff that it wasn't designed for, and they're not updating it. It's like there's third parties, there's other ways to build that up.
Well, again, I mean, I can appreciate the hassle of having to prepare individual packages, and it's great that there is a crowdfunding service that is allowing for fulfillment and things. And I can also appreciate Jim Lee's statement that not every creative wants to be an entrepreneur. But the reality is, and I say this as someone who makes content themselves and has had to get a little more business-minded, get off your ass and learn. Because if you want to sell and you're in a crowded market, you can hear the edge of my voice, everybody. But it's the truth. It's like you might have to do some extra work that doesn't involve drawing Spider-Man. I'm sorry, that's the breaks. But deal with it. And deal with it by hiring someone else to fulfill. That's fine. But also, I mean, God, I spent another great weekend with Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor. And Jimmy's a guy that's creating his own packages. Shelley Bond does it with all of her stuff that she's been putting out lately through Off Press. She and her husband, Philip Bond, and their projects and stuff. And yeah, it's you might have to put a little more elbow grease beyond drawing. You want to make money?
Some creators are good at it and some aren't. And I hate to say it, but it's like one of the reasons that Jack Kirby was in the fix that he was in and Will Eisner wasn't is, some people, some people are like, Eisner and Kirby on the comic side, take your pick. On the business side, there is a clear champion there. And
absolutely.
Also, finally, I think it's actually kind of rich coming from Jim Lee, who is actually one of the most accomplished comic entrepreneurs you can think of. Has certainly done well enough with that. And
yeah, I don't expect. I don't expect Jim Lee to ever come on my show, to be honest. I've met him several times, and it always seems to me, and I don't mind saying it publicly, that he stays on the right side of the velvet ropes when it comes to dealing with some of us. And it's like, okay, I wish things were different. I hear nothing but great things from people who know him much better. I get a little frustrated that I can't get him to sit down. And one thing that always annoyed me was he's like, oh, there's no more in-depth interviews going on in the comic, you'll forgive journalism side. And I'm like, yeah, hi, podcast. How you doing? Well, I don't have time to listen to a podcast. Well, okay, that's fine. But bad news.
You want to sit down with Forbes, Jim? If you're listening, happy to talk anytime, anywhere. I've been notably at getting anything from DC Comics. I'm happy to listen. I mean,
Milton manages to corner, these guys to sit down with him for ICV2, and God bless him, man. That's awesome.
He's the best interviewer in the business.
I completely agree.
If you're in the business side, he gets right to the point, and it's really.
Oh no, he's a master, dude. I'm a novice, and again, that's why getting back to, hey, I'm learning the entrepreneurial things that I need. Obviously, also vocabulary to better my business. And truly, it's like, no, I mean, I need to make these moves as well. Again, hire who you need to.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a good artist and you're a good business person, also doesn't mean that you're the best spokesperson for your own work. True. I mean, especially these days, if you don't want to be the star of the day on Twitter for something you've said. And, like that comes with the territory too. You got to get the word out about these projects. And, the environment for that is unforgiving. It really is. And, I think some of that, like you reap what you sow, and it's like speech is speech and fine, like more is better. But it can get a little daunting out there for sure.
Where do you think things are right now? With the Comicsgate people, and honestly, Rob, you were the first to alert me with it was either the Saturn Awards or it was the other sci-fi awards, and the Honey Badgers that had poked their head out and suddenly were representing a very conservative point of view and complaining that the nominees were being taken away by people of color and people with a social agenda that went against the grain of classic sci-fi. Crock of shit. But I mean, it seems like the Comicsgate culture has created its own little ecosystem that they operate in, and they've got their audience, and that's why it's funny. I was talking to somebody about Substack, and they're like, "Yeah, I understand that they gave platforms to some controversial journalists." And it's like, yeah, that's the point, is someone can pull a cancel culture on someone, and that's fine. And the mainstream might say, okay, fuck this person, we're not going to deal with them anymore. But that person can go off in a corner and create its own newsletter or a YouTube channel or any way, a different platform to get their stuff out. And there's going to be a following, for better or for worse. So as I've observed Comicsgate, I found it interesting to see that they are sustaining themselves in some ways more successfully than what we see on the mainstream side.
Yeah, I mean, look, my own personal point of view on this is that people like what they like, and it's not up to anybody to tell anybody else what they want to, what they should be reading, or even worse, it's not up to anybody to tell a creator what they should be creating. And, I kind of leave it at that. And like the controversy of it is an unfortunate artifact of the culture that we live in right now. And it's just like everything is polarized. I was writing about this in 2013, actually, when Gamergate first happened. And I think I may be the first person to use the term Comicsgate in print, because I wrote a story for ICV2 in 2013 or thereabouts, saying if Comicsgate ever happened, it would be catastrophic. Because I was writing about what was going on with Gamergate and stuff like that. And for this, not for the reason that like, obviously the abusiveness of it is completely intolerable.
Great.
And the social attitudes are certainly not anything I want anything to do with. That said, I mean, like, those people are out there, and what can you do? It's a free country, and they can believe as they please. But the fact that it becomes a dumpster fire, and like it draws in all of this outside media attention, and all of these people in polarized media environments who don't give a shit about comics, who've never picked up a comic, who don't have a dog in this fight, or like, hey, let's you and him fight, like, oh, big culture war in the comics business, and then all of a sudden it becomes much more of a spectacle. When it's inside the four walls of our community, we know who these people are. We can deal with them or not, or whatever, and stuff like that. Once it starts dragging in these professional culture warrior, class that has no underlying affection or interest or affinity with the material one way or the other, that to me is where it starts becoming an ecological problem, let's say, in the fan space. And that happened pretty quick, and here we are. And it's like the points that both sides are making are now lost in the fact that it's like, hey, let's you and him fight. So not meaning to trivialize the valid criticisms
No, agreed.
of the Comicsgate stuff, but like, well, it's not even worth discussing anymore. It's just like,
okay. Well, and then as you said earlier, it's like what you like. Just don't be an asshole about it, and shit on others for not liking what you like, or for them liking what you don't like. And there's just enough room to satisfy every taste. And it's like, I don't understand the need for the added hostility, other than people like spectacle. God, as you know, news coverage has become synonymous with sports coverage and wrestling, and to try and find a reasonable discussion about a controversial subject, it's pointless. Don't go to news, cable news or anything for it.
And people feel powerless, especially in the last year, with
absolutely.
This. And it's like, this is the power that you have, is to like, go out and, castigate somebody on social media one way or the other. And it's, there was a great graphic novel on this a couple of years ago. Nick Trinasso's Sabrina is very much about this sort of isolating effect of social media and how it kind of warps our perceptions. This was even before the pandemic. And I think that just, it's driven a lot of people around the bend a little bit on stuff. And I hope we get back to comic conventions and meeting in person and, having these arguments around the bar and, across the dealer's table.
Yes.
And stuff like that. That's I think that'll do us all a world of good.
Again, I can speak from experience. I went 3 weeks ago to Mohegan Sun in Connecticut for Terrificon, and it was great to be back. And yeah, I mean, as we said in our first discussion about this divide, it's a shame, because we could all come together at a convention and enjoy what we like, and not worry about politics. Leave the politics at the door. We're all Spider-Man fans. We're all Superman fans. Whatever.
That's always been the enduring appeal. And there are people that I've been friends with in the comics business for many, many years. I have no idea what their politics are, and I don't care. And so all right, whatever. But it's the world we're in. That said, I got my tickets for New York Comic Con. I just found out I'm going to be doing a panel for those people that are interested in this NFT discussion. I don't think I can announce the details of it, but there will be a panel on this topic if you are for it, if you are against it, if you want to hear the conversation, we're going to have some really interesting people that have participated in this from the creator perspective, from the publisher perspective, from the developer perspective. And it's like I'm hoping maybe futilely that it can as I said, I know from working with some of the people on the developer side that they are listening to the people that have critiques of this. They want to solve this. It's not just bullshit. It's not just marketing.
Oh, I hear you.
If they can't solve this, they don't deserve to have a business. Just plain and simple.
You're right about that. Yes.
And they're not in the business to like destroy the earth or anything. And so hopefully that we'll get to the bottom of that, or we won't. And then the people with the pitchforks, should win. But in the meantime, I think there's some really interesting. I'm working on one of the things I'm dealing with is this, like doing comic auctions where NFTs stand in for the actual comics, with the advantage being that if you're going to have a giant-sized X-Men 9.8 in your house, you have to insure it. You stay up nights wondering, oh my God, is it yellowing in my basement? It's slab.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, you win it at the auction. If you're not there to pick it up, like you leave it to the mail. There's a way that if you can own it and have custody of it and basically have the deed to it and have it stored safely off premises somewhere else, and then when it comes time to sell it again, or you want to take delivery, you can arrange it on your terms and stuff like that. Like there's a convenience factor that this adds into this end of things. If people are interested in the collecting side, there'll be some announcements coming up in the next couple of days or weeks about these auctions. There's some really cool stuff coming up. We don't know if the model's going to work. We don't know if it's going to add value. We hope it does. We hope people see the benefits to it. But like that's something. And again, it's not going to leave the garage until they fix the
engine
once and for all. And again, like keep an eye on the individual companies, because nobody can answer for the whole industry. But some companies are individually more responsible on this stuff than others. So
agreed. Absolutely. And in fact, at those same forums, there were people that were represented NFT companies, and their ideas that they were explaining were interesting, intriguing ideas. David Macho, one of my favorite international people that reps a lot of artists and stuff. I'm like, what do you think? He's like, what I think is I'm going to wait about a year and see where everything is, because also there are tax implications that haven't been figured out yet. And he's just like, I'm telling all my people, if you want my opinion, lay low, let all this shit shake out, and then we'll see. So it's, again, I mean, we really are at the beginning of this frontier period. So
the interesting thing is, if you own it, so the thing about NF, the non-fungible part, means that you can't break it up. So like a Bitcoin, you can take a Bitcoin and you can like parcel it out into little pieces. Non-fungible token means there's one and only one thing. So if you own that, that's a collectible. That's like and so the tax implications are the same as if you bought a book on eBay or you bought a toy fair or something like that. And you got it on your shelf and you're the only owner of it and everything. There are schemes around right now to securitize NFTs or securitize slabbed books and basically selling fractional ownership in a Batman #1. And it's like, I own 1% of this Batman #1. I paid, $15,000 for it or whatever the going rate would be for that. And it's like, that's different. Now you're talking about SEC regulations, different kettle of fish. So to me, that, like, of all the stuff that's coming in the comics business side on the collectibles, I know this is like super in the weeds and esoteric, but I know that your listeners, if there's anybody out there that is like following this stuff, it's probably people listening to this show.
100%, bud.
That's a place where that's a rat's nest waiting to happen, and I would be very cautious about those kind of arrangements.
Interesting stuff, man. No, again, really, it is so weird where things started last year with the pandemic, where we are now as we face, if not a full shutdown, certainly, again, limited access. It's going to be a very interesting late summer into fall. And hopefully, other countries with the Delta variant, saw numbers all of a sudden drop drastically. Maybe we'll have that effect here. Who knows? We've got the booster shots coming as well. All those things dictate what I'm going to do convention-wise for the rest of the year. I was telling you off the air that, Baltimore, I'd like to be there, and I really do want to be there. I'm also watching the numbers and being concerned, being a fat ass, and also with other concerns and stuff. It's like, hey man, I just want to make sure I'm safe. And of course, we got C2E2 at the end of the year, and that's my backyard, and I'll probably be there.
I'm going to go to Emerald City.
Okay.
As a vax person, like my risk calculus right now is obviously you don't want to get sick.
Right.
But, if it's like you go to a con and you can get con crud that'll put you down for a couple of days. If it doesn't put you in the hospital and it doesn't put you in the cemetery, that's good enough for me. And also, like, I don't have kids. I'm not around people that are vulnerable. I mask up when I'm outside. So all I'll do is what I can to be socially responsible, to not spread it to other people or stuff like that. But for me, it's a manageable level of risk. It's a lower risk than me like getting hit by a cab when I step outside the Javits Center, which is like not zero, right? So, it's like life is risk. So,
absolutely, man.
Everybody's going to make up their own mind about that. And it's not like I tip my hat to Repop for being strong on the vaccine and negative, test requirement. They have kids coming in there. They got people with compromised health. They need to do whatever they can to protect those people. So I'm really glad that they've announced that policy.
Mentioning Repop, and as we talk about conventions, another wrinkle I wanted to ask you about, and that is the people behind Fan Expo taking over so many of the Wizard shows. Oh. Yeah, talk to me about that. What do you think?
Fan Expo is on the move. So it's interesting the reactions that have happened in the convention industry. Like in 2019, if you looked at the landscape, Repop was on the move. They were buying up all these overseas shows. They were like all the shows that they had started up the last few years were just starting to make money. Like they had just turned the corner and all of this. And Fan Expo, the shows that they ran, they bought some good shows. Like their strategy is good. Not everybody likes the ambiance of their shows. I mean, it's for a particular kind of fan that frankly, like the Wizard World thing is a good match for their, that's a smart brand move. But when over the pandemic, when Repop was retrenching and like looking at their investments and saying, do we need this show? Do we need that show? What's going to happen with Philly? What's going to happen with all those overseas shows? I'm hearing, that's coming down. Fan Expo is out there spending money. They started a show in San Francisco. Do you know how deep in the pocket you got to be to launch a show in San Francisco with the hotel rates there, the Moscone, or the convention center, the unions, like all this shit? There's a reason that there's been no decent show in San Francisco
since 2009. I was at that last WonderCon in San Francisco.
Well, they bought Denver, which is a nonprofit show, and God bless them that they did, because I think that would have been curtains for them.
Yes,
if they hadn't done that.
Agreed.
And now they go out and they buy up Wizard World. They've got 17 shows in North America and Canada and the U.S. They've got Informa, which is one of the world's biggest event companies with trade shows and stuff like that, fully behind them. It's a new day there, and it's it'll be very interesting to see what they do.
Absolutely. How about the online shows? I was involved with several of them, and I'm glad. And I helped Baltimore with their online show, and worked with the Mainframe Comic-Con guys, and we put on a couple shows independent of Baltimore. It's interesting. I feel that a couple players on the online platform threw money at guests, and all of a sudden, I can say as an independent person that helped put on a couple of these events, it's a lot harder now because Galaxy Con, I believe is what they're called. They threw a lot of money around it to the TV and film people and comic creators as well to exclusively go with them online. And that's when I'm like, I'll do a focus thing here and there and talk to my friends and maybe organize something. But I'm not certainly the scale that we were operating with last year, that we were able to do on good faith and involve charities and stuff, and truly the goodwill of the guests being available and stuff. I think it's a different playing field today.
Yeah, I like GalaxyCon, and they were another one that it's like, look, necessity is a mother of invention. You do what you got to do. My wife actually is a big Star Trek fan. She loves like checking out their free panels. She doesn't go for she doesn't spring extra for the stuff. my understanding is, again, like this is an opportunity for the talent to get paid. So
Sure.
good for them. The fans want that. There's purpose-built platforms that are coming. So there's like Cameo, there's like Peak, there's a bunch of these other ones that are basically taking this model that we've developed for the online celebrity appearances and turning that into a freestanding thing, which would be great if we could separate that business a little bit from the in-person Comic-Cons, so that the people that want the celebrity experience can get it, but they don't have to come all the way to Comic-Con
Right.
and like walk the aisles and like not buy anything. Like they spend their $300 on their meet and greet, and then that's
Right.
it. They don't buy anything else.
Right.
And it complicates those experiences.
Yeah.
And unless your show is entirely about that, like the ones
Ace.
that Ace, they architected their entire event around that, and that's fine. It's like, if that's your strategy, then do that. But I wouldn't be sorry to see that end of it go. But
I'm with you.
hopefully we look back. The term virtual Comic-Con, conjures up the same pleasant associations as like bell bottoms and pet rocks and all of these like terrible ideas of years past. Like when we think of 2020, it's like, oh yeah, wow, what were we thinking? How
dare you, sir? I did one of those events, a couple of those events. I'm teasing you. That's great, man.
No, I did them too. You did them because you did them. Like you had to do it. Like that's what was on offer. But like let's have real Comic-Con sooner rather than later.
God, yes. and truly, I want the in-person events to happen. I kind of think, and we'll see what GalaxyCon does with their model moving forward. I did much like what we're doing right now, this conversation, and what I've been doing with Word Balloon for the last 17 or 18 months is like, okay, along with the audio product, I want to do a video product so that people can jump in. If they want to ask questions, that's great. If they'd rather watch it than listen, that's fine. I have been paying attention to the analytics and in fact, I have to credit Chris Hardwick, who told me 7 or 8 years ago when I'm like, hey, this is what I do. And he's like, are you on YouTube? And I said, no. He's like, get on YouTube. And I'm like, isn't that for like, cats licking their nuts for 10 seconds? And I go, my stuff is, 2-hour conversations. And he's like, seriously, put your content on YouTube. And yeah, man, truly, even when I just talked to John Ostrander. It's an audio only product. Throw it up on YouTube. The numbers are there. And it's like, and people will come, Ray, as James Earl Jones once said. And it's the truth. So it's interesting. And I do think that online events will be alongside the physical events in the same way that, streaming television is now alongside over-the-air television.
Yeah, indeed. And parenthetically, anybody that's still listening to this conversation at this point probably has plenty of time on their hands. Like so. But no, this is yes, and I salute you for you found a model that works too. So that's great.
Well, Eunice is a Star Trek fan, your wife, and I am as well. And I'm of the belief that good content is like potato chips. You can't stop at one. You want more. You always want more. You're always looking for more.
To say Eunice is a Star Trek fan understates it considerably. The most dangerous place in the galaxy is between Eunice and like some Star Trek thing that she wants to get to. I'm here to tell you, she's like.
Is she enjoying the new product?
We don't watch the new product very much. We're more classic fans.
I've
seen the Lower Decks stuff, and I think that's actually pretty witty. We watched
It's better, but I'm with you on live action new Trek. And I'm wholly on hope for Prodigy. Two of my favorite people in the comic biz, Julie and Shauna Benson, were writers on the first season. And that makes me feel better. Knowing that Mark Bernardin is going to be on season 2 of Picard makes me feel better. But I would say live action Trek has been a great disappointment. I agree with Tarantino where agendas are more important than good storytelling. And I just haven't seen that from new Star Trek. And Lower Decks is slightly better. But I still, my God, I just watched season 2's second episode, and I can't give it more than 2 stars. In the first episode, I'm like, wow, this, you would think you'd start a new season with a big punch. And also Mike McMahon, clearly a Star Trek fan, clearly a great Rick and Morty writer. This guy is capable. My supposition is that he is being noted to death, and what we're getting on screen might be the third version of a joke, and somebody up top saying, no, we can't do that, that's too harsh, but it's an adult cartoon. Yeah, sorry, we still can't do that. That's my feeling watching this stuff. And the live action thing, good Lord, it's a train wreck as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, these things have their seasons, and we're heading toward winter for Star Trek. I'm afraid.
Winter is coming, everybody. Absolutely. Well, I hope to see Eunice at an after hours, and we can both lament at our current state of live action Star Trek. But dude, as always, great conversation, and no, it's this kind of inside baseball that I always love to discuss here on Word Balloon, and I know I'm always going to get some good information from you. Continued success as always at ICV2 and at Forbes. I don't know if you can promote what's coming up.
Yeah, well, so yeah, I mean, if you go to my Forbes page, I just published the Crisis Zone review. I'm going to have a review coming up at the end of the month on the strange death of Alex Raymond, the absolutely bonkers Dave Sim decade in the coming. Now, Dave Sim, I get it, but this is quite an artistic statement, and so I'll have something to say about that coming up. My ICV2s are every other Monday, so I just have one up talking about the Substack stuff that we were doing today. You want to follow me at Rob Salk on Twitter. The NFT folks that I'm working, if people are curious, it's called Curio, and the website is oncurio.com. You can check it out. That's where the marketplace is. And they also have their environmental policies and everything. And again, it's like, I'm not meaning to show for anybody, comics journalism doesn't pay the bills. I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes where I'm talking to a bunch of people, facilitating relationships. And I'm very eager for the creators and the publishers that are interested in this. Happy to have those conversations. For the ones that are wait and see, totally respect that. For the people that are up in arms against this, I hear you. I hope help is on the way on this, and that we won't be having this same conversation in 6 months.
Well, we'll see. And again, I mean, this is again, we're in new territory, just as we were in our last conversation. So the nerd culture is in flux, and every now and then I'm happy to take a temperature like you and see what's going on. So as always, I appreciate this conversation, and hang out if you don't mind, because I want to talk to you a little bit off the air.
Sure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, buddy. For people watching live, don't forget in about 4 hours, I'm going to come back with my Kinescope show, which has been a lot of fun. Me and Gabe Hardman and the company talking about the early days of live television. And we're pitching underhand tonight. We're giving it an easy one as opposed to some of the great anthology heavy dramas. We did 12 Angry Men, the original production of that last week. This week, it's all about the Honeymooners and the great Jackie Gleason and the incredible comedy that he was able to generate. Not just the classic 39, that despite the film quality was live TV. And I had to kind of convince Gabe. I'm like, no. They shot that live through some very interesting technology. We'll talk about that at 11:30 Central Time, 12:30 Eastern Time, 9:30 Pacific. So if Rob is so inclined, he can join us for that. But so that's the subject of tonight's Kinescope, and great stuff coming for Word Balloon Live next week. But until then,